Hey there, this is Behind the Scenes. This is your warning that yes, this is the behind the scenes version. If you want to look at pictures that we talk about, click show more down below there. There's pictures shown in this episode, take you over to a Flickr album. We have very little time, so a very short preamble. You've been warned. This is Behind the Scenes. Tom, take it away.
Hey. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And home theater related, I nearly broke my face with a speaker. So, yeah.
What
Do as I...
with it?
Well, one of my height speakers up on its stand, because I don't have anything attached to my walls. I use very tall stands with my height speaker, so I was just doing some cleaning in that. And instead of being wise and doing what I would tell anybody else to do, which is remove the speaker from the stand and then move the stand and the speaker separately, I was like, I could just balance this speaker against my forehead as I pick up the stock of the stand and move it over a few inches. And of course, it slipped and it banged into my nose, which is why my nose is nice and bright red on the bridge of it, if you're watching the video.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did that just happen?
That was this weekend.
Oh.
It was worse. It has gotten slightly better.
Recalibrated my home theater. I got a Y splitter so that we did the thing. I had some issues with it. And God help me, you were right. The stupid Tenon makes you change the volume to reference volume when you're doing the test tones.
Yuppers.
And that's never happened on a Tenon prior to this one.
Well, not for Odyssey, but for the manual test tones.
I've never noticed it in the manual test tones either, but maybe I haven't run manual test tones in a couple of receivers.
Could be.
But this was it's just dumb. But the upside was that after you changed the volume for the test tones, it changed it back to where it was. Like it didn't leave it at reference volume, so that when you went out, you were like blasting your home theme.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that's good.
That was fine. It was very hard to get. Like I would calibrate. So what ended up happening is I calibrated the subwoofer so that they were exactly the same.
Okay.
Which was I calibrated for 75.
Okay.
And then it told me that the subwoofers were too hot when I did it. I was like, okay, well I'll calibrate them for 72.
Yeah.
Because I should get 3 dB of boost anyways.
Yeah.
Still said the subwoofers are a little bit too hot. I'm like, well, I'm not, just shut up. That's what I said, basically.
Ignore and proceed.
Ignore and proceed. So, because I knew they were close enough. It's going to be within the range. So I ran Odyssey, and then afterwards I went to the manual test tones again, and it actually had the subwoofers at negative 7.5, which I mean they said it was too hot, but that seems like whatever. And then, but when I was running the test, I ran all the test tones for all the receivers, and watched my meter, and it was showing basically 70 dB for everything for some reason, except for the subwoofers, which were showing like 68.
Okay.
I'm like, well, guess what we're doing? Bump those things up a couple of dB and on the trim levels, and I've been living with it there. I haven't noticed a huge difference between it and me having the two subwoofers plugged in independently,
right?
Having it calibrated, whatever. I haven't noticed a huge difference between the two.
Well, given where you've positioned your subs, there shouldn't be a tremendous, because they actually are like midpoints of the side walls, basically, right? So
yeah, they're offset, but they're offset
a little bit offset. Okay,
yeah, they're offset the same on either side. So anyway, I went and did it, and it's fine, whatever. I was vibrating the home theater. We watched Aquaman, which was
good,
dumb,
but fun dumb.
It was, everybody, my son, even my 15-year-old son said, that was pretty good for a DC movie.
There you go.
For a DC movie, that was phenomenal. It's the best thing since a Nolan movie. So
it is a sliding scale.
That's not true. Best thing since Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was phenomenal.
Wonder Woman was good.
All the way up through
the very end.
The end, which was terrible. And this one was like, I think it's very hard to make people underwater look not stupid.
That's the challenge.
And Aquaman's dumb, though. I like Jason Momoa. I don't know that he really carried that movie. I mean, he looks the part, but it's like all of his lines, I'm like, yeah, your timing was just a little bit off on that one. You could have done better, but whatever. All right. I will say today is June 11th, which I am saying is Captain Marvel Day, because that's the day that Captain Marvel comes out. And I told my wife that I was going to go today to go buy a and she's like, "It's Father's Day this weekend. You can't."
It is.
That. I'm like,
I guess you know what you're getting.
Well, she said I wasn't allowed to go, and then my son said, I was gonna buy that for you. I'm like, well, fine, then I will take you and make sure you get the Atmos version. Which Aquaman, somebody was complaining the other day that, oh, you can't have, the you gotta get the Ultra HD Blu-ray so you can get Atmos. Atmos was on the Blu-ray version of Aquaman.
Oh, okay.
At least the one I got from.
No, it's just there are
Blu-ray.
lots of movies where the Atmos is only on the Ultra HD, so
from Redbox.
Can't always count on it.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into this. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us a question at avrant.com. Rob at Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. Our website is www.avrant.com. Whatever. You can contact Rob directly at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflectum, Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. We also have a YouTube channel, which you can find but not comment on because
comments are turned off, disabled.
YouTube sucks. So weird. So very weird. And I was watching a YouTuber recently, and he had some controversy on his channel, and the YouTube comments were actually pretty okay. But he was talking about the Reddit. Apparently his Reddit subthread just was toxic. I'm like, there's a place worse than YouTube?
Absolutely.
Reddit, I guess.
Yeah, it can't be.
No.
Well, 4chan would be worse than that, but...
I guess so. All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leave us a PayPal donation. And for that, we want to thank Shannon this week. So thank you for Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon, thank you very much for that one-time donation via PayPal. We appreciate it.
And if you want to support us on an ongoing basis, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
Yep, podcast is on there.
And sign up there for $1 a month or infinity $1 a month, someplace in between there. You can support us. We want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. And thanks very much to our 82 patrons over there.
Yeah. If you can't support us financially, if you can figure out some other way to support us, just let us know and we'll mention you. So Jason talked us up to SVS when he bought a Prime wireless sound base and an SB1000 subwoofer for his home office. What is a sound base?
That is it's like the amplifier, right? So it wirelessly connects to your network. It still uses the DTS Play-Fi app, and then it is an amplifier to power any pair of passive speakers. That's the wireless sound base.
I for some reason, every time I see a base like that, I think it's the thing that goes underneath your TV.
No, not this one.
I didn't think that they had made something like that. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, and congrats on your purchases.
All right, in the news from Carl, last week we talked about the HD Home Run Network tuners for over-the-air TV, plus the HD Home Run DVR service. The next day after we recorded, because...
That's how it goes.
Screw you guys. The HD Home Run Scribe and Servio were made available for pre-order, expected to ship June 30th. And once again, I'm sorry. I have become completely embittered by pre-orders. I do not pre-order. I don't do it. I don't pre-order anything I expect to get on the day they say it's going to ship.
Yeah, that's very often the case.
So hopefully this is not the case here, but let's just put that little caveat there. The Scribe is an all-in-one over-the-air tuner with a DVR solution. There's a $200 Scribe Duo with 2 tuners and a terabyte of built-in storage that's available exclusively at Best Buy, and the $250 Scribe Quattro with 4 tuners. See, I don't know how they came up with these names. If you already own a HD Home Run Network tuner and just want to add some plug-and-play DVR storage, there's a $150 Servio. It's a 2 terabyte hard drive that plugs into your network. All Scribe and Servio models come with a 1 year of HD Home Run DVR service, and it's $35 a year to continue the service after that. No availability announced for Canada yet, though.
Yes, it was a Canadian person who was asking that we brought up the subject, so I thought I'd throw that in there. The information that we gave last week still stands for a Canadian.
All right. So Google Stadia will launch this November. At launch, it will cost $10 a month for Stadia Pro service. Some but not all games will be free, which means it's included in the subscription price. If your internet connection speed is 35 megabits per second or higher, you can play 4K HDR at 60 frames per second with 5.1 surround sound. So, not at all compressed, though, I'm sure. Just be, no compression artifacts whatsoever. 10 megabits per second with 40 milliseconds. Latency is the worst connection allowed and will limit you to 720p with stereo audio. Whatever.
Yep.
You can play in any Chrome browser on a computer or directly on any Pixel device. If you want to play it on a TV, they sell the $130 Founder Edition, which includes a Chromecast Ultra, the Stadia controller, and 3 months of service. I thought Stadia also worked with like the Xbox and the PlayStation controllers.
Oh, well, I mean, on your computer, in your Chrome browser. Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as doing it on your TV, let's go with a Chromecast Ultra.
Okay. Any games not included in the subscription can be purchased individually starting in 2020. A free Stadia base service will be offered with Stadia base. You can only play games that you've purchased and free Stadia base. Okay. And a 1080p with stereo is as good as it gets with Stadia base. So whatever.
So, I mean, this whole thing, so, I mean, I thought the idea was going to be, okay, you pay whatever the subscription price is, it's $10 a month, and that it was going to be, yeah, like, whatever's on the service, you get to play. I thought that's what it was going to be, but it's not. Some games, if you pay the $10 a month, you will get for quote-unquote free, included in that price. But a lot of other games, you just have to purchase them. They said there'll be discounts if you're on the Stadia Pro subscription plan, and no discounts if you're on Stadia Base. But still, the idea is that you're buying this thing. So when, not if, when Google gets bored of this, because they get bored of everything that they do. So when they get bored of this and they just say, yeah, this service is just going away, all the stuff that you bought, it's useless now.
Gamers are so upset right now because the Epic Game Store, right? So we had Steam, right, which is the Valve, the people who made Portal and Half-Life and all that. They've had the Steam store and they were pretty much the only game in town for years. Right. And everybody was mad because
you had like EA Origin, but that was kind of only for EA stuff.
That was only, no one cared about that. So everybody's mad because the Steam store was full of garbage. It's just like literally people would just throw up whatever, and Valve refused to do any sort of curtailing or looking at the stuff that was coming in.
It's a bit like the Nintendo Switch now.
Yeah, curating is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So then Epic came out with a game store, and they started buying up games that were like on Kickstarter. And so a Kickstarter game got really excited, really popular, got fully funded or more, and now it's coming out, and Epic's like, hey, we'll give you this amount of money if you are an Epic Store exclusive. And now people are mad, like, I don't want to have to split my library between Steam and Epic. Well, first of all, you guys were complaining about how bad Steam was. Now you have an alternative, and now you don't want to have to split your thing. And now we're going to have Google as well.
Oh, yes. Stadia. And some games will be exclusive to Stadia. So
I'm sure they will. They will. All right. At E3 2019, Microsoft announced some details about Project Scarlett. That's the next Xbox console, as well as their xCloud, which is probably an actual cloud. xCloud will launch in October 2019, beating Google Stadia to the punch. They'll also announce you'll be able to use your Xbox One as a personal server to stream any games you already own without having to physically bring your console with you. Wait, what?
So you own something on your console is connected to the internet, and sort of tunneling through the xCloud service, you can access the games that are on your console already as like a private server of your own. Your console is acting as the server.
What are you playing it on, though? Your phone?
Phone, some other like handheld device, your laptop maybe, that type of idea.
All right,
I don't know, that's what they said.
Okay. Scarlett will launch holiday 2020 with its vague hardware specs sound extremely similar to what Sony announced for the PS5. AMD CPU and GPU, ray tracing, and solid-state storage to greatly reduce load times, native 4K with an eye towards supporting 120 frames per second, 8K resolution. As they've said, it's their intention to support 4 generations of gaming on Scarlett, by which they mean backwards compatibility for all games that can be played on the Xbox One, including the Xbox 360 and original Xbox games that can be played currently on Xbox One. So what that probably means is they'll do the same thing they do with the Xbox One, which is you take your 360 disc, you put it in, they say, oh, okay, yeah, you own this, and then
that's the idea. But that's pretty good. Backwards compatibility for a whole bunch of games. So that's good.
Yeah, because my autistic brother cannot handle non-backwards compatibility.
Right.
He just doesn't understand. I mean, neither do my parents, but my parents are old, and he's autistic, so I guess. Oh, I never hardwired.
It's going to be a short podcast anyway, so.
Yeah. All right, here we go. The comments. Josh, who claims he is the OG Josh before all the other Joshes started showing up. I know we had more than one Josh. Sorry, Josh. I thought.
Oh yes, we do. It's been a running theme.
Josh works for an IT company that is involved in the coming rollout for 5G wireless networks. He says that anytime we see street lamps and traffic signals being replaced or converted to LED, they are most likely also installing 5G infrastructure, which is exactly, I think, what we all thought.
Yep, he's confirming it.
But Josh warns that we shouldn't expect 5G to be the be all end all. It's very short range and requires line of sight, so it really only makes sense in densely populated areas. Furthermore, the utility companies and the municipalities are very often in conflict over who owns the rights to all the street lamps and other poles. So there's politics involved, which has often left the company that he works for stuck in between. Despite all that, he says that in areas where legal ownership issues have been settled, they're making great progress, but the licensing of the wireless spectrum and conflicts over who owns which frequencies also comes into play. So Josh is personally more interested in seeing greater expansion of wireless telecommunications signals using the UHF-VHF spectrum that was freed up when television broadcasts all moved over to digital that use higher frequencies. The lower frequency UHF-VHF signals can't offer the bandwidth and speed of 5G, but they can easily travel for hundreds of miles and penetrate buildings. So, yeah. Can I just say in general, I'm tired of people fighting about stupid stuff?
Oh, man, when you got private companies, governments, individual cities, individual states, everybody's like, yep, that invisible thing, that's mine.
The conversation I have to have with my kids were like, how come the lights are all timed up to this point and they stop being timed after this? I'm like, that's the county line, or that's the city line, or that's something like that. You know, that's we just crossed over and they don't talk to each other. They're like, that's stupid. I'm like, my generation tried. I'm sorry, you guys.
Welcome to adulthood.
Aaron says he contacted his JVC rep in order to order an X790 projector for a client. The JVC rep informed him that they have now ceased production of the X790. So Aaron says that if you were considering that model, now's the time to snap up any remaining stock. Rob H.
Me.
Is that you?
Tis I.
I was like, we have another one. We can't have two Rob H's. We're not answering any questions.
It's just me.
He'll have to call himself Robert or something. Finally looked into the audio side of IMAX Enhanced. According to the Denon X8500H manual, it's a nightmare. Bass management is turned off in IMAX Enhanced listening mode. Thank you.
This is the quote from the manual.
Here's the quote. The bass information of speakers are not redirected to subwoofer, but you get a better bass effect from front and center speakers by a special algorithm from IMAX when the front and center are set to small. What?
So they're like, you don't have to set them.
You know what the algorithm should be? Bass management.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. So you don't have to set them to large. So when you go to a full IMAX theater, all the channels are full range. Sure. But guess what? It's also a really big theater.
Usually. With
really big speakers. And they're like, well, obviously that's what you want at home too, apparently, IMAX Enhanced. So That's what they're doing. No bass management.
No one needs that. And they also said when speaker configuration surround back is set to 2 speakers, surround audio is output from the surround back speakers. Taking a page from Microsoft.
Apparently. I mean, again, they're like, hey, you go to a full IMAX theater and the 2 gigantic surround speakers are like in the rear corners. They're not on the side walls. They're in the rear corners, so I guess they figure surround back speakers are going to be closer to that. Anyway, the good news is you can turn it off, a disc that is IMAX Enhanced will just play as regular DTS or regular DTS-X and not be IMAX Enhanced. At least they let you turn it off. That's the only good news. IMAX Enhanced. That's what it means. No bass management, and your surrounds play out of your surround backs. Welcome to IMAX Enhanced.
Somebody up top said to an engineer, we want this to be as close to an experience, the same exact experience, speaker experience that you get in an IMAX theater. And they're like,
yep.
Well, I guess this is it. But who would turn off bass management? I mean, I could almost forgive the surround back thing. I don't at all, but I could almost understand that. The bass management is just ridiculous, but okay. So IMAX Enhanced is dead to us.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are different implementations, but I wouldn't count on it. That's probably what they're doing.
IMAX Enhanced is dead. There.
To us, anyway.
Title to the podcast. No, that's just right. Dead. That way, that way we get all the clickbait.
That's right.
All right, here we go to the questions. FOMO Josh. Josh said he had to look up FOMO. That's what he's got, all right. So I guess if you people don't know what FOMO is, it's fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. That's what it is.
So anyways, he's glad to have a diagnosis. So on to his bajillion questions about how can he spend more money, and we say no. We said that a Sony X900F 85-inch TV would do an excellent job of upscaling, as good or better than the Panasonic UB820 Ultra HD Blu-ray player for regular 1080p Blu-rays. Would the UB820 be worth it as his Ultra HD Blu-ray player? It might be, but for different reasons. Literally, any Blu-ray to 4K conversion is... I mean, I think a monkey could do it. I mean, it really... Can
you multiply by 4?
It's really all it is. It's not that hard. It's not like 3.2 pull down like we had to deal with interlaced DVDs. Yeah,
trying to de-telecenter. That was that was some fun stuff. No, the reason to get an UB820, and actually you could justify it to yourself, is because Sony's televisions in general do a really, really good job of displaying any HDR that's been mastered at 1,000 nits. Sony's
that player, right?
What was that?
You can't set that. You
can set that in the UB820. You can set it so that no matter what is on the disc, the UB820 will send a signal to the Sony television that this is mastered at 1,000 nits, and the Panasonic player will do any necessary tone mapping to fit all of the detail within that 1,000 nit limit. And that's where it would be beneficial, because the way Sony tends to handle HDR across all of their displays, including their projectors and their OLEDs, is they tend to try and keep the average picture level where the signal says it should be, and that makes a lot of sense. And then they're willing to clip off some of the brightest detail that's above 1,000 nits. They're willing to just sort of clip that off. It all just fades into uniform white, and you lose some detail up there. That's the way they've chosen to tone map HDR signals. So if you have the Panasonic do the tone mapping beforehand, if there is any information above 1,000 nits, the Panasonic will retain it. It'll shrink it down into a 1,000 nit signal, send that to the Sony, which will then handle that 1,000 nit signal very, very nicely. So you can justify the UB820 with the Sony television, but not for the scaling. That wouldn't be the reason to be for the HDR.
Yeah. So Samsung's current 4K flagship LCD is their 82-inch Q90 at $6,000. Sony's current 4K flagship LCD is their 85-inch X950G, which is $5,000. Why is Samsung smaller and more expensive?
Way more local dimming zones.
Yeah, I mean,
that is the reason. Yeah, we're talking, there's, well, in the 85 X950G, I'm not exactly sure how many there are. In the 65-incher, it's only like 46, 48, something like that.
We
dimming
say
zones.
Only, like 2 years ago, 46 was like top of the line.
Oh, yeah, but, this is a flagship, so you might expect more. In the 85, I'm sure there are more zones in that. But like in the 65-inch Q90, there's 380 some odd zones. Yeah. So there's just way more local dimming zones in Samsung's flagship. And if you're like, how come Sony isn't equaling that? Well, they reserved their huge number of local dimming zones for their Master Series, which is the Z9G this year. But that is an 8K television with the backlight master drive and oodles of zones in it. So yeah, the 4K model got a lot fewer local dimming zones, but it's $1,000 cheaper.
So what should he use to stream 4K content? There are way too many choices. He wants to watch Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime, HBO, and also be able to rent 4K movies. His streaming hardware options are the Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player, if he gets it, Xbox One X, and Apple TV 4K, or the apps built into the Sony itself. What should he use for what? Well, the Xbox will do Netflix for sure. I don't think it does. YouTube does it. Do you have to pay for 4K YouTube?
No, don't have to pay for it. Although, if you want to get 4K HDR and surround sound from YouTube, technically there is a way on the Xbox One X, but not through the official YouTube app that's on there.
I've never seen it. I've never seen that.
I mean, my answer is for everything except YouTube, I would point you to the Apple TV 4K. Yeah. Because if the service supports Dolby Vision and Atmos audio, the Apple TV 4K will output that from everything except YouTube and Plex. Plex, it can do lossless audio, Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master audio. It can do those, although it actually decodes them internally and outputs them as 7.1 PCM using the Infuse app, not the official Plex app, so a little bit of a wrinkle there. But YouTube, it handles terribly. It doesn't even do 4K of any kind, and it doesn't do surround sound. So for YouTube, I would actually point you to the YouTube app that's built into the Sony television. It does 4K, it does HDR, it does surround sound. So that's actually the best option for YouTube, and for everything else, Apple TV 4K.
There you go. He thought he felt reassured about his center speaker choice. We keep saying to get an RBH impression, Elite. Oh, here he goes. R515E center. Then he came across Audioholic's video from 2014 where G says in the very first minute the center channel consists of up to 80%. Just don't. Gene and I do not agree on this. He has emailed me angry emails saying that my stance on center channels is dead wrong, and I'm like, take another speaker out of the system and have it still work.
Yep.
And he's like, well, you can't. I'm like, well, there you go.
Yep.
80% of the movie soundtrack at times is a very important speaker. Make sure you get a good one. Well, first of all, the RBH is a good one. So
it is a very good one.
Second of all, stop it. 2014 is the same year as the Home Theater Geeks episode that talked about getting the biggest and best center speaker you possibly can because of how important it is. Was this just a 2014 thing? No.
Oh, no. There's still, that's still the way people talk. And I agree, if you have a center speaker, it should be a good center speaker. It should also match really nicely with your front left and right speaker so that when something pans across the front three speakers, it sounds like the same sound going across your front three speakers.
Okay, let's just be realistic here, okay? So if you, like in your theater that you're talking about, let's say you get the RBH speaker that we're talking about, all right? Now, and then you experience it or whatever. Now, let's say you do something ridiculous and get something like an actual huge tower speaker, a massive tower speaker, like, full range, 20K to 20 hertz, huge thing, acoustically transparent. You somehow get it so that it works and you get up there. How much louder is that huge speaker going to play than the RBH speaker?
Yes, sitting your 8 or 9 feet away, as we know Josh will be.
It's going to play exactly 0 louder.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have calibrated it correctly, it will play 0 louder. The thing that these people are all saying is, don't skimp on the center channel.
Yes. And I would agree with that. Don't get a center that is much worse than your front left and right. And a bit of that thinking came in because there's this 2-channel crowd, right? That's got like, you got to have these fantastic front left and right speakers for 2-channel only music, and we don't want to use subwoofers for music. And then, home theater's not very important. You just get a rinky-dinky little terribly designed center speaker and throw it in there. That's
home
fine.
theater box, whatever you got lying around, use that as your center.
And so we're saying, like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to have horribly mismatched front three speakers. They should match each other really nicely. That's the bottom line.
And this also comes from this advice, I think, also comes from the home theater in the box crowd.
Yep.
When you're looking at a home theater in a box and you've got 2 home theater boxes that basically are the same price, basically have the same complement of speakers, and one has a center channel that's slightly larger with 2 woofers instead of 1, and you ask me which one to get, I say get the one with the bigger center channel because that is going to be important for dialogue intelligibility.
Sure.
But what you're talking about here is in this theater of yours, you asked for a good center channel that will match with your speakers. We gave it to you, and now you're saying, but I want something bigger. Well, if you really want something bigger, take what you got and like build a fake box around it to make it look
you
bigger,
should get a look at how large that RBH center is before you start considering it small. No, it's a
RBH does not really know
big speaker.
Small
no, they really don't.
Let's be honest here. They don't do good at small speakers in general. I mean, generally speaking, their small speakers are not as small as you think they're going to be, but their center channels, they don't do small centers. All right, that Fusion Research server that can back up full Ultra HD Blu-ray discs for bit really caught Josh's attention because money. But then we mentioned the $7,000 price tag, and that's a bit much. Well, there we know. There's a line in the sand that we've been looking for. $7,000. Let's just start
for a movie server.
Everything costs $7,000 to make you stop looking at it. We said there are much less expensive alternatives using Plex and whatnot. We also mentioned UHD friendly drive. What is that? So could we run through the equipment he would need in order to make his own 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray server? Is he correct in to assume everything would need to be HDCP 2.2 compliant? First of all, when Rob said UHD friendly drive,
yes,
that's Rob and I have talked about this off the podcast a couple of times. And basically, there's when you're trying to rip a Ultra HD Blu-ray, you can't just take any old drive and do it.
Definitely cannot. No, if you get a drive that actually on the packaging says this drive can play Ultra HD Blu-ray movies, all right? If it says that, you cannot use that drive to rip Ultra HD Blu-rays. It has all the copy protection and stuff built into it that will prevent you from being able to back up any Ultra HD Blu-rays. What you need is a drive that is physically capable of reading those discs, but is not an officially supported Ultra HD Blu-ray drive.
Sounds very gray market, but that's not what it is.
Right. Well, it's basically really early drives.
Right.
It's BDXL drives that the laser is capable of reading the triple layer discs. It's capable of reading the pit spacing and everything that's used on Ultra HD Blu-rays, but it came out before there was an official Ultra HD Blu-ray spec. So it's physically capable of reading them, but isn't an official drive and doesn't have all the copy protection in it. And that is UHD friendly, which actually, if you go to any store, there's no such thing anymore. All of the drives that used to exist, they've all been updated or new versions have replaced them, but there's still a way to get them.
Right. And the drive that Rob's probably going to point you to is the one where it's supposed to be an internal drive.
Yep.
For your computer. So you have to either install it into your computer, or you take the drive and you get one of like the cases that you can get in order to connect it up to your computer. And you have to be very careful not to update the drivers.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the first thing it's going to ask you to do is going to be like, should I update these drivers? No. If you update those drivers, you are screwed. Yeah. All right. So what do you need? Well, you need a PC. You have to have a PC. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to have a PC. All right. Now, you asked, does everything need to be HDCP 2.2 compliant? No. This is one of the whole ideas. You are backing up this disk, you're taking it off the disk, turning it into a completely different format, and doesn't have to be HDCP 2.2 anymore. So I'll quickly say, if you wanted to use your computer to actually play Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, like you put an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc into a drive in your computer and it plays just like an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, that can be done. It can be done with a UHD-friendly drive, so you don't have to have two separate drives. But you do have to use Cyberlink's Power DVD Ultra software. It's the only game in town for playing it back, and they have their specs listed for what you need. You need at least a 7th generation Intel Kaby Lake CPU or newer, and you have to have a motherboard that supports Intel's copy protection stuff for all of that. So that all information is available over at Cyberlink, but that's not really what we're talking about. What you want to do is go to makemkv.com. Because MakeMKV is the software you'll be using. It'll turn the file on the disk into, not surprisingly, an MKV file. And also on MakeMKV's forums, they have all the information you need. They actually have an Ultra HD drive guide and an Ultra HD FAQ. We'll have the links for those at avrant.com. You want to go in there, and these days, to get a UHD-friendly drive, the easiest thing by far to do is there are a couple of people on that Ultra HD forum within MakeMKV that are like, we've got the drives, just buy it from us. They're not ripping anybody off. They're very reasonably priced. If you get one from a store, you have to go through quite a process to downgrade the firmware to make any of this work. So honestly, just get one from one of the guys who's on the MakeMKV forum. It's so much easier. So that will get you a MKV file onto your computer. Now, you want to store those somewhere. It could be as simple as on a USB hard drive, but I would recommend, because they take up a lot of space, some of these things are like 66 gigabytes for a disk. They take up a lot of space. I would recommend you get yourself some network attached storage. But that's optional. You need somewhere to store this stuff. And then lastly, you need something that's going to be your Plex server and your Plex playback device. I would highly recommend getting an NVIDIA Shield to do both of those things, because it's not that expensive. It's a terrific server for Plex, and it's also a great Plex playback device. I will warn you, if you're using it as a Plex server and you want to have it awake all the time, in the NVIDIA Shield's settings, you need to go into its screensaver settings to prevent it from idling to sleep. That's where they hidden the don't ever go to sleep thing, is under the screensaver settings, which you might not find otherwise. And for the love of God, turn off everything to do with HDMI CEC, because that will ruin your life. But that's it. That's what you need. Make MKV, a UHD-friendly drive, a PC, somewhere to store the stuff, and an NVIDIA Shield is what I would recommend.
All right. Joe has JVC X550 projector in his theater, and at the moment he has it connected to an Oppo 203. In his bedroom, he has a 50-inch Vizio M series TV with a Sony X800 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which is what I think I have.
No, you got the 700.
No, I have the 700. Sorry. Should he sell his Oppo and move his Sony X800 to the theater? It seems like he could get a lot of money selling his Oppo. With the combo of his JVC X5500 and the Sony X800, do almost as good a job with 4K HDR discs.
I mean, it might.
I don't really see. I mean, okay, so he's asking the question: should he sell his? The question is, should you sell your Oppo?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. They are kind of hot right now.
Yeah,
and
you can make a lot of money.
You can make some money doing it. And can you get another Blu-ray player that will do, as good a job with the 4K discs that you're looking at?
Yeah,
and I think the answer is probably yes. Because unless you're looking to really upscale a whole bunch of old stuff, then I would be more worried about it.
I mean, the real question here is, how are you opting to watch HDR content on your X550? Because the X550 was that model year where it was basically JVC's very first stab at HDR-compatible projectors. They actually have their own settings, because the settings that came with that projector, they're not right for HDR, and JVC fully admitted that, and they actually put up a whole they put up a whole topic on their website that's like, here's what you need to change to make HDR look halfway decent on these projectors. So what a lot of people were doing, and one of the reasons you might have purchased an Oppo 203, is that a lot of people were actually just converting the HDR to SDR inside of their Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and just sending an SDR signal to their JVC projector at that time, because they're like, you know what, that actually works a lot better than the way the JVC inherently handles HDR from that model year. And what everybody liked about the Oppo was that you could convert the HDR to SDR, first of all, really well, and second of all, while retaining the wide color, while retaining the P3 color, which wasn't always the case with, the really inexpensive Ultra HD Blu-ray players. So the thing is, the Sony X800 also does a very good job of converting HDR to SDR, and unlike almost every other player out there, gives you some manual control over the average picture level, the average brightness level of the image when you do that HDR to SDR conversion. So, is it every bit as good as the Oppo? That can be argued. The Oppo is more adjustable than the X800, but the X800 is adjustable, and if you aren't converting HDR to SDR, if you're like, you know what, plugging in JVC's settings that they listed and sending an HDR10 signal to the projector looks fine to me, well, then it really doesn't matter. Any Ultra HD Blu-ray player would do. So it's really about the HDR to SDR conversion. And there, the X800 could do almost as good a job.
So what would you recommend as his next step in his 4K HDR projector journey? He's considering a projector upgrade, but he isn't in a big rush. What are our thoughts? My thoughts are right now is a very good time to wait.
Yep, I agree.
That we are seeing huge increases in features and functionality in these projectors in just the last couple of months.
Yeah, and this year in particular, we're seeing a lot of projectors across the whole spectrum, from the BenQ $1,500 HT3550 through Epson's new 5050 UB, and through JVC's genuine 4K models, the NX5 and NX7 and whatnot. These models are now, projector manufacturers have figured out HDR largely. We're seeing much better tone mapping, and we're seeing a lot more user adjustable options inside the projector itself to say, you know what, for this particular disc, it's got to be brighter. And now they give you a whole bunch of steps in the projector now where you can change that for yourself, and you can do it disc by disc, or, change how it handles, it reacts to the metadata and all that kind of stuff. They've more or less figured out HDR. Now, we can see a little bit more refinement, and the prices come down. So if you aren't in a big rush, I would say wait, because I think, I don't know if you'd be happy with a 5050 UB. You're coming from a JVC that has even better black levels and contrast, as good as the 5050 UB is, and as affordable as it is. It'd be a sideways move for you at best, with probably better HDR handling in the 5050 UB. But we know the price on those actual 4K resolution JVCs are going to come down. And if you're not in a rush, I'd probably wait for that. I'd at least wait to see what the 2020 models are going to be and what they're going to cost if you're not in a rush.
Yeah. Robin says he heard our podcast for the first time, episode 644, and we have piqued his interest. Robin,
hooray.
Okay. 644. I don't remember what that one was about. Was that one of those titles that was completely clickbait?
I don't know. I can't recall.
Maybe it was Sorry Josh. Probably probably was. Robin's total volume of air is around 9 bajillion cubic feet. So 9,000
9,000.
Half of that is the family room where he's got a 7.1.2 setup. It's a corner arrangement and the ceiling is slanted. So we've got a kind of view here. So
so this would be like looking from the opening. All right. So behind the camera is the other half of this room.
Right.
And we're looking into his family room. The ceiling is slanted. It's lower on the left and higher on the right. Fireplace directly in front, and then the TV's in the corner next to the fireplace.
To the right of the along the high wall, like in the corner.
That's
where
right.
The apex of the ceiling is there. All right, and he's got front, left, and right center speakers there. The center's on top of the TV, and he's got some height speakers.
Yeah, it looks like front height speakers. Maybe they were Yamaha Present speakers at some point.
They're not very high. They could be higher.
Not terribly.
Yeah. And his seating is L-shaped, sort of, so that encompasses both the fireplace, which is to the left of the TV, and the TV, which is to the right and in the corner there, and kind of angled.
And he's got some in-wall surround back speakers that are up high. They're above his windows. And then he's got surround speakers that are on the sides and actually just like on tables or stands at the moment.
What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay. We'll get
That's the measurement positions that he took.
All right. So he's already got a Sony TV and a Denon X485, 5400 receiver that he's enjoying. So the next upgrade he'd like to focus on is getting a second sub. At the moment, he's using a DevTech PF1500. It's a sealed 15-incher with a 500-watt amplifier. Plays down to 18 hertz according to the specs. He's chatted with SVS, and they suggested the SB3000 if he wants to try pairing with a sub he already owns. Really? SB? Okay. But Robin got the sense it might be best to go to get two entirely new subs. So what do we think? What would we recommend he do? Well, okay, the subwoofer is behind the TV.
At the moment.
In the corner.
Yeah. At the moment, it's in the corner behind the television, this corner-oriented television that he's got.
Right. The DevTech sub, I don't know much about that. It's 15-inch. He said it was sealed?
Yep. Sealed 15-inch, 500 watt. So, I mean, the SB3000, even though it's technically a smaller diameter driver, it's got way more amplifier power. And the 3000 series is quite appropriate for this amount of air, 9,000 cubic feet. Although I'd probably be pointing you to a ported 3000 series.
The same way.
It'd be quite appropriate though for that volume of air. And I mean, chances are family room setting and with this opening to another space that's about equally sized to the family room, he probably doesn't want to play the bass at full reference volume down at 20 hertz anyway. So I'm not
really
super
have
worried
a ton
about
of
that.
room for another subwoofer. The only really places I see subwoofers are that I can see where he could possibly place it is to the right, on the right wall between whatever those two pieces of furniture are. I don't know what to call that.
The right wall. You mean to the right of the television?
To the right of the television, but so you've got the TV, you got a speaker, you got whatever that cabinet thingy is, and then there's a space, and then there's another cabinet.
I mean, I was almost thinking that, so we know that behind the camera view is another room about equally sized to this family room. I was like, can the two subs just basically go to the left and the right of this entrance? Right? That'd be like the midpoints.
It's got furniture right there, though.
I know, but could furniture perhaps move? And I don't know. That was kind of my thought, because that kind of gets you into the midpoints of the walls of the actual entire space that we're considering. But I mean, honestly, if you left a sub behind the television and then put one sort of diagonally across from it, like sort of behind the apex of his L-shaped seating, I mean, that wouldn't be the end of the world either. That would be okay.
So, okay, let's just because he's just started listening, so let's back it up a little bit and talk about subwoofer placement. So, Robin, when we talk about subwoofer placement, one of the things that we're most worried about, there's a couple of things, but the most important thing is getting placement that's mirrored to itself. So, optimal placement is in the midpoint of a wall and then the midpoint of the opposite wall. That's mathematically optimal placement. So, if you have a rectangular room, you put it in the middle of the front wall, the middle of the back wall, or the middle of each side wall. That's optimal placement. You do that, and you will get the best possible bass response that you can get out of two subwoofers in a room. That's just mathematically true. If you can't do that, then go opposing corners. So front left corner, back right corner. Remember, this is in a rectangular room or square, but really rectangular.
I mean, you could almost imagine, think there's like a fulcrum right in the very middle of your room, and then a long stick across that, and the subs on the two ends of that stick. So you could spin the subs around on this stick that's attached to the fulcrum right in the middle of the room, and that would always have the subs across the room from each other, right?
So at the beginning of the podcast, when we were talking about my subwoofer placement, Rob said yours are basically in the middle of the front, in the middle of the walls, and I said they're a little offset. They are. So my back subwoofer, I have a door in the back of my room, so I have it inside of that door, and then my front subwoofer is poked in as far as I can from the inside wall, so they're kind of mirrored to each other. So it'd be in from the back right wall, in from the front left wall, and so that they kind of are mirrored to each other. So that's where we want your subs to be if we can. Yeah, that's where we want them to be. So if so we're now talking about taking us. In theory, if you have the sub where it is right now, it's in the front right corner of the space.
Right.
To the right of the
and then behind your camera to your left in the corner of whatever room is behind this family room.
That would be
the diagonally opposite corner. Yes.
Now you're going to say that's dumb and I'm not doing it. And I completely understand that. That's why Rob's saying if you could put it in the midpoint of the side walls, even though it would be at the back of your theater area, that would be optimal for bass. Now, if you can't, and this is where we run into problems with a lot of family room placements, and this is not just you, this is everybody. We've all run into this. In my own case as well, I've run into the same problems. You have limited number of places that you can put your subwoofer. Yeah. Right now, you've put it behind your TV because you can, and it's probably very convenient to put it back there, and you like it. That's great. But by adding that second sub, if you're going to have limited places that you can put this, the second sub may or may not be as big a benefit as you want it to be, or as you're expecting it to be. It's not like adding 2 surround speakers and then suddenly you're like, wow, I have surround sound now. I didn't have it before. Adding that second sub can make a huge positive impact, or it can do exactly the opposite. So, and anywhere in between. So you need to tell us, like, where can you put these subs? Can you put them in the midpoint of the side walls? Can you put one instead of an end table, kind of where you took all your measurements, I guess? Can you put it right there? Can you put it, where are the possible locations that you can put the sub? Because you may find that taking the sub out from behind the TV and the sub you currently have and checking each one of those locations, you may find that just moving that one sub into the 3 or 4 locations that you have may make enough of a positive impact that you're like, I don't really need the second sub. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to consider subs and the room are inseparable. They affect one another. They can't be separated from each other. It's not like high frequencies from speakers where you move the speaker and now it's clear where the sound is coming from in the high frequencies. In the deep bass, the room and the sub are connected together, and you place that sub in that room alters the pattern of the waves in that room, and that's what we're talking about. So, I mean, would an SB3000 be the right purchase to pair up with what he already has, or should he get 2 completely different subs? I mean, I always come back to the cylinder form factor because they're nice and tall and a small footprint, and I'm like, a pair of PC4000s, would be fantastic in this room size and fairly easy to place, but that's a lot more money, way more money than a single SB3000.
Right. I know that maybe mathematically, and probably pairing with the DefTech, my thought is to keep the DefTech. I mean, it's not going to be as powerful a subwoofer as the SVS is going to be. Yeah, I think that's just hands down, objectively a truth. And if you can live with that, then be fine with it.
Which a lot of people could. I mean, again, are you actually playing full reference volume? Probably not.
To me, SB, the sealed box feels too small.
Well, it's just, I mean, they're going, he already has a 15-inch sealed, so they're suggesting a sealed 3000.
I know, but suggesting something based on what somebody has is not, to me, the right way to do it. You suggest on something based on what they need. And I think you would need the ported version. That's
a big box. That PB3000 has a big old box.
Big box.
And it would be capable of significantly higher and lower output than your existing DefTech, which leads you into, if you could, you would end up replacing that DefTech. Yeah. Right. That's where we end up landing. So
the answer to your question is, first of all, tell us where else you can place subs. And let's just remember too, as you get further away from your normal speakers, things get softer, generally speaking, right? But that's not the case with subs.
Yeah,
your
subwoofer room and subwoofer
filling up the entire room. So thinking to yourself, well, if the subs are closer to me, they'll be louder. Well, it's not really true. You might feel them more, but they're not really louder because they're filling up the entire space with bass. The fact that the subs are both behind you is not a problem either, because it's not thinking of where you're sitting. The sound is not affected by where you're sitting. It's affected by the walls. So you need to place them in relation to the walls, not in relation to where you're sitting. So there's a lot of bass is a completely different thing than
it is. It's a different animal than all the other speakers in the higher frequencies.
So if you could, I think that what I would do is take your DefTech out from behind, out of that corner, put it like where you took your measurements, like right between the two couches, which to me in my brain, and this may be wrong, is very close to the center of the entire space.
Not the center of the entire space, the center of his family room.
Right. So, it could be closer. I mean, just as a option to see how that sounds. But, come back to us with some more information and then we'll let you know. I do like the cylinders, but I don't know that cylinders are not for everybody. I like them.
But I'm thinking if they do go at the to the left and the right of this entrance that we're looking at, that cylinders might make sense there.
Yeah. Tate has moved. His new family room is 12 feet wide, 16 feet long, 8 feet high. His main seats are a love seat that is currently 10 feet away from his 55-inch OLED. Too far. He's got a Denon X4300H receiver, and he'd like to set up a 5.2.4 Atmos configuration. There's a video, which I did not watch.
Yeah, it's about a minute long.
He's got DefTech 8060 towers and the matching 8060 center. All three of those speakers have powered subwoofer drivers built in because they're DefTech, and of course they do. He's also has 4 Energytake Classics satellite speakers, so that's 7 speakers total, and for 5.2.4 he needs 9. He was thinking he could add a pair of DefTech Pro Monitor 800 compact speakers as his side surrounds, or he could try to find some Focal Little Birds or go with SVS Prime Elevation speakers as his Atmos speakers. What would we recommend, and do we think would deliver the most seamless and cohesive sound? So he's got speakers he's happy with, right? So he's got 7.
For his fronts, yeah. He's happy with his front 3. He has these smaller Energytake Classics that he's sort of just been using as his surround and surround backs for the time being. But he's like, could you take the Energytake Classics, which are nice, small little satellite speakers, mount them on the ceiling or high up on the side walls as the Atmos speakers, and then just add a pair of DefTech Pro Monitor 800s to go with his front 3 DefTech speakers? Would that be the best solution, or better to keep his Energytake Classics as his surrounds and then get 4 brand new speakers to be his Atmos speakers?
I mean, I think you're fine either way. I mean, I don't think there's a huge difference.
I mean, to me, I would go ahead. Yeah. To me, I would go ahead and get those DefTech surround speakers, because the Take Classics will make excellent Atmos speakers. Yeah, they're easy to mount.
Aren't they kind of small?
They're small. They're satellites. Yeah. I mean, they were the alternative, the great alternative to a home theater in a box, right? You get those in a separate receiver.
I would be 100% behind that. I mean, to me, if you're gonna kind of upgrade your theater, which kind of sounds like what you're doing, getting some new side surrounds would would feel nice.
Yep.
But I honestly, I think that as far as sound wise, I would definitely take the energies and put them up rather than use those.
Then keep them as your surrounds and buy 4 new.
Yeah.
In his video, where he had his surround speakers at the moment was like quite low and actually a bit in front of his listening position. However, he did say this is like a new house that they just moved into. So I'm thinking, since he has these ideas in mind, maybe that wasn't the permanent placement. But if and when you get these new DefTech surround speakers, do make sure, they're a little bit elevated. They're at least to your sides, or actually in a 5.2.4 system, ideally they'd be a little bit behind your primary seats. But I think he probably already had that in mind. And then, I would go ahead and mount those Energytake Classics. If you can mount them to the ceiling, that's okay. In his video, he was like, he can do 3 to 4 feet in front of him, 3 to 4 feet behind him. But also his room is not that wide. So if you decided to mount them high up on the side walls, that would also work just fine.
So before he moved, he was just using the powered subwoofers drivers built into his DefTech speakers, no external stubs. Now he's thinking he'd like to get a pair of SVS PC2000 cylinders and place them diagonally opposite corners. Will the PC2000s be a good choice for his room? How big is this room?
Yeah, so
12 by 16 by
12
8.
by 16 by 8. And he did say he has like a door coming into this room.
So you can close it, I guess, right?
You can, yeah, this can be an enclosed room.
Yeah, that would crush this room.
That's more than you need, honestly.
Yeah.
1000 series subs would be fine in that room size. They
don't make 1000 series cylinders, so
they don't make a cylinder in that series. No, I mean, if you can afford PC2000s, you have zero concerns about their output and extension capabilities in your room size. And he was like, size wise, they would fit. I did notice, though, again in his video, at the moment, his front right tower. So he's thinking front right corner, rear left corner, and that's great. I mean, side walls wouldn't really make sense in a room this narrow, and front and back doesn't totally work with the way the room is laid out. So yeah, diagonally opposite corners, fantastic. But I did notice, I mean, his front right tower, where he's thinking of putting a sub, it necessarily has to be fairly close to the side wall. And I was like, cylinder, I mean, I guess he's thinking the cylinder would go right into the corner behind that tower, and that could work for sure. But if you did want to maybe sort of keep the tower where it is and have the sub a little bit in front of it, I mean, honestly, SB2000s in this room would be...
The boxes, yeah.
The sealed boxes
that would be fine, too.
Would be completely fine in this room size. And that way you could have it in front of the tower without blocking any of the, the tweeter or mid-range drivers easily.
If you wanted to save money and get a big... And you could afford a bit... the space for a bigger box, you could go with the PB1000s as well in this thing. Yeah, you'd be fine with that, but that would take up a lot more room.
That would take up more space than the SB2000s. Yeah, so I mean, I could definitely, because of where your front right tower is placed, I could very easily get behind SB2000s in here.
Yeah. So when he gets the pair of SVS subs, how should he set his DefTech towers and center? Does he still use the powered subwoofer drivers somehow? Well, we've answered this, I think, last weekend.
Yeah, we talked about this with Golden Ear, but similar situation.
Exact same situation. So you're going to send them to small. You're going to cross them over at 80 hertz, just like you normally would. But the subwoofer driver still needs to be on because it is playing sounds way above 80 hertz.
Yeah, up to about 550 hertz in these DefTechs.
Yeah, so yes, it is still being used. You're still using it. You're not.
You still have them plugged into outlet power.
Yeah. And but you still set them to small and you cross them over.
Yeah, you still set them to small. You connect them with just one pair of speaker wire. You don't need anything else going to the speakers, but you should play through one speaker at a time. You should play yourself a sweep and manually adjust the volume knob on the towers and on that center as well. All of them have these powered subwoofer drivers built in his front three speakers. So you do want to play yourself a sweep and manually adjust the volume knob on those so that you have a nice even sounding sweep, because again, those power drivers are playing up to about 550 hertz in these DefTech speakers. So you don't want to have, massively overblown bass everywhere from 550 hertz on down, or massively underpowered bass. You want to dial in that volume dial so they sound nice, but still set them to small and cross them at 80.
So his current TV is 55-inch LG B6 OLED. He has the opportunity right now to upgrade to a 65-inch B8 or C8, with the C8 costing about $250 more than the B8. Is it worth it? 65-inch. Well, I mean, you're sitting 10 feet away, and 55 inches is too small. I think 65 inches is still too small.
Still too small, but nicer.
But better. So,
and if you're just asking what's the difference between the C8 and the B8, it's very, very little. The C8 has the gradation smoothing, the smooth gradation thing, so that if you're watching a crappy compressed source like Amazon Prime Video, where you're looking at a blue sky and it's made up of stripes of blue instead of gradually changing shades of blue, it helps a little bit with that. The B8 doesn't have that gradation smoothing. The C8 does. And the other one is that, okay, on the C8, if you've got an Xbox One X, you could output 1080p at 120 hertz in HDR. You can't do 4K 120 with HDR out of an Xbox One X, but you could do 1080p 120 hertz with HDR into the C8. On the B8, you could do 1080p at 120 hertz, but no HDR, or you could do HDR, but then not at 120 hertz. So I don't know how serious of a gamer you are, but that's the only differences between the B8 and the C8. So honestly, it's that gradation smoothing. And I mean, that's just futzing with the signal.
what it is. For $200, I'm taking the 10 inches, $250.
Oh no, the 250 is the difference between the B8 and the C8.
Oh,
both
B8
65
C8.
inches.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's the gradation smoothing. That's pretty much the only really key feature. I don't know if that's worth it to you. I mean, it is just futzing with the signal. It can't magically make a terrible source fantastic, but it smooths it a little.
No matter what the guys at Best Buy say.
Yeah.
All right, Jason. As we mentioned in our Listener of the Week section, Jason got a SVS SB1000 sub for his home office. It's roughly 1,400 cubic feet, and his first SVS subwoofer. And he thinks the SB1000 is nuts. It's their smallest sub, but it clearly has way more output than he would ever need. You are correct, sir. He realizes it's all based on cubic feet, but he's also seen plenty of people lusting after multiple PB16 Ultras in what he would consider a pretty normal sized room. How are Rob is a perfect example of this.
I have PC13 Ultras in a teeny tiny room, but I mean, I didn't do that for that reason. I'm like, these are subs that'll live with me forever. So if and when I move to a much larger room, they can come with me.
So how are some people living with such setups, multiple PB16 Ultra level subwoofers in a normal house? Are they literally wanting to move the whole house? Well, I mean, you got to remember, some people are crazy like that, but most people, I mean, if you're setting your subs up properly, what they're getting is not more volume; they're getting more extension. You know, they're getting lower extension, which, you know, no matter the size of your room, reference level should be reference level at your seat.
Yeah.
So, you know, what you listen to at your seat is what they listen to at their seat. It's just that their subs don't have to do any work whatsoever to make it that loud.
I mean, a lot of people, it's the fear. What if I get an underpowered sub? Yep. A lot of it is that. I want the headroom. What if I do want to play a concert level 16 hertz at 130 decibels? I mean, what if I do? What if I do and I can't?
I don't even know how you could. I don't know where you would get that signal to do it with.
Some kind of pipe organ music.
16 hertz.
What if I want to do it and I can't? That's where that's coming from. No, I live with my PC13 Ultras in my teeny tiny room by turning them to level 4 out of 100. The volume scale on my PC13 Ultras goes to 100, and I have set them at 4. That's how I live with it.
Is it correct to think that many people are paying way more power than they will ever actually use? Not many, but those people, yes. I think that they are a vocal minority.
Uh-huh.
The people who do this are on forums talking about the fact that they've done
Absolutely.
it and how wonderful it is and how they know they've got the headroom and they don't have to worry about anything ever again. And you should do it too to justify their purchase so they don't feel bad about themselves.
No, dude, that SB1000 is giving you all you want in your home office and more, and congrats, you're done. You don't have to feel inadequate in any way.
Believe me, your sub is playing just as loud in your seat as their subs are playing in their seats. It's just theirs can hit things that yours can't, lower things that yours can't, and who cares? Blake finished his basement last fall. The full space about 950 square feet with mostly 8.5-foot ceilings. So I don't know what that is in cubic. Here we go. So he's dealing with roughly 8,000 cubic feet of air. His theater area takes up the left portion of the room with a kitchenette over to the right. I kind of remember this guy. He installed a 7.2.4 speaker system using SVS Prime Series bookshelves, center, and Prime elevation speakers, along with 4 in-ceiling Polk speakers. He put a single SVS PB 4000 in the middle of his back wall next to his fridge, and he's got all his eggs are scrambled.
If it's playing
I
inside the shells,
Commander, now I can't. All my eggs are scrambled. What am I gonna do? So, Rob, how do I fix this? So I put the sound absorber underneath my fridge. Yeah, I guess. He's got a 25-year-old 10-inch acoustic research sub up front. A Marantz SR6012 receiver powers the sound system with an Epson 5040 UV projector casting an image on a 135-inch screen. His floor is hardwood. He put down a 10-foot by 14-foot rug, but no other floor or wall treatments. He installed acoustic ceiling tiles. The only drywall on the ceiling is the portion that covers the main structural support beam. He insulated above the drop tile ceiling, but he has HVAC ducts and regular doors with a small air gap at the bottom, so it isn't completely sealed basement. No basement's completely sealed, dude. It's just that, I mean, the air has to get out, or it dies. This looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's very clean looking setup.
it's very nice. All right, so we've got a rug underneath this thing, and it's got a drop tile ceiling. All right, and hardwood everywhere. At overall listening volume below full reference volume, the bass will still shake the coffee table upstairs sometimes. He installed the SVS sound path isolation feet on this PB4000, and those did help, but they didn't eliminate all bass from traveling upstairs. Given his drop tile ceiling, HVAC ducts, and non-sealed doors, is there anything to do to prevent this bass leakage? Anything more you could do? Solid core door, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, short of some changes, some renovation, not a tremendous amount.
You didn't say anything about your other sub. Did you put sound path isolation feet on those too? Because even though I don't think that sub's doing nearly as much as the SVS is doing, it's still doing something, and it can transmit sound directly into your floor, which will send it to the wall, which will send it upstairs.
But from what he described, it seems like it's certain frequencies, which are almost certain, the resonant frequencies. And the resonant frequencies just traveling through the air are still enough, you know, because he said, yeah, the isolation feet helped, and we would expect that, but they didn't eliminate all of it, and that is also to be expected. Short of some pretty major renovation, I mean, if your room is literally echoing, you know, some absorption and bass trapping might help a tiny bit, but in those resonant frequencies, the coffee table is still going to shake. And as we'll be talking about in a bit, if you get yourself a much better second sub to replace that acoustic research to match well, and you're able to get much more uniform and linear bass throughout the entire space, which is what the goal is going to be, it might help, because right now you might have some pretty big humps still at the moment. You know, particularly in the really deep bass that acoustic research sub just cannot reach, you might have some pretty big humps. So if we were to smooth those out throughout the entire space, it might help a little, but don't expect miracles here. You know, air and sound is still making its way upstairs, and at those resonant frequencies, that coffee table is probably always going to shake a bit.
Yeah, remember, if you wanted to fully keep the sound down here, you would have to build a floating room within a room.
You gotta, that's pretty much what you gotta do.
Airlock and everything, just about. Yeah. So it's a non-trivial thing to make that happen.
Oh yeah.
So he asked, could we please explain the difference between pressurization and decibel or dB? Well, dB, decibel, is how loud something is at a particular point. Well,
I mean, strictly speaking, decibel is just a scale. We really should be saying, every time we talk about using decibels to describe how loud something is playing, we really should be saying dB SPL. Because you have to put something after that dB to say what are we using this decibel scale to describe? Because decibels are just a logarithmic scale. That's all they are. I mean, you could say it's decibels on a Richter scale. That we don't use it that way, but it could work. So we have to say that dB is referring to something, and we're referring to SPL, sound pressure level. So interestingly, pressurization and talking about the SPL level, I mean, they are the same thing. The P in SPL stands for pressure.
Right.
So I think what gets lost is sometimes people are saying, I can hit these amazing decibel levels, I can hit these amazing sound pressure levels, but I don't experience full pressurization. How can that be the case if both of these things are talking about pressure? And what that really comes back to is when we describe this idea of pressurization that you feel but don't really hear, we're talking about really low frequencies. We're talking about
all
hertz.
The air in the room moving in the entire room,
all being displaced
in unison, and that's what we mean by pressurization. So when you look at a room, the total volume of air in that room, man, if I hit this mic one more time, I've hit it at least shock mount 3 times. I don't think that's going to help with the amount of times I've hit it this time. So I apologize to all you people going, what's that clicking sound? That's me. We're talking about all that air moving so that you feel it moving against you. You know, and again, like what Rob said, that's really low frequencies. You're not going to feel that at high frequency. You're going to feel it at very low frequencies, and that is something that's that is completely based on how much air is in the room and how much power your subwoofer has, how much ability to displace air it has. So Wait, did we ever get to the next?
Well,
we're still talking about this.
Yeah, one thing I would bring up is that if you look at, like, if you go over to something like Data Dash Base, right, where he's done tons of measurements and shows the graphs of tons of different huge subwoofers, and he takes these outside and he turns their volume dials all the way up as high as they can go, and he keeps increasing the signal gain until he reaches the absolute limits of the subwoofers that he tests. Josh Ritchie over there. Right. And you'll notice that when you get to those really, like, the maximum levels, that they are able to output a higher sound pressure level. You typically, like, right around 50, 60 hertz is where you're getting the most. And then even on the most powerful subwoofers they are, when you drive them to their max, they roll off. And down at 20 hertz, they aren't as loud as they are at, typically around 60 hertz. So when we're bringing a sub into a really large room versus a really small room, we're bringing it into this really large room, we've got all this extra air to displace, and maybe way down at 20 hertz, it just isn't playing 115 decibels to begin with if you're trying to hit full reference volume. And then because the room is really large, you're not getting a ton of room gain to sort of, you can think of it, it's not truly amplifying the signal, but what it's doing is that the sound is bouncing back and forth in the room, and you continue to hear it even after the sub stops moving. That sound is still ringing within the room, and in a small room, that continues to happen at a higher decibel level, a higher pressure level, and that is your room gain. So even a sub that is barely playing loud enough, that room continues to ring and resonate that sound, making you experience it. Reinforces, making you experience that. Whereas in a very large room with a lot of air, that dies down more quickly. So when we're saying we're trying to pressurize a room, we're talking about the really low frequencies and having to displace all that air. And when we're saying, this sub can kick you in the chest up at 40 to 60 hertz really well, but to fully pressurize it, you still need even more, and that's because we're talking about the really low stuff.
Right. So on to his next question here, because I do want to answer this. If you know your room size, what calculations can be done to figure out which subwoofer you should choose? When he spoke to SVS and let them know his budget, they said that dual PB2000s could be a good choice, but SB4000s would be even better. He couldn't afford dual PB4000s, so he got one for the time being. But how is that determination made? So what Rob's just described is how that determination made. How loud can it get before, so that the 20 hertz, like all the way across, you can get equal volume within a space
that you aren't rolling off below the threshold that you're trying to hit.
Then you say, okay, now how much air can that move? And then there's the room. And I'm going to say this, I love SVS, but they're a company that sells subwoofers. All right.
Sure.
And, they are just like their stupid tool does. They're going to look at how much you think you can spend, and they're going to try to spend all of it. Okay.
Sure.
In some ways or another. And a lot of it's well-meaning, and they're right. 4,000 PB 4,000 would be better, or whatever they ended up.
Yeah. Well, for what, 8,000 cubic feet that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong at all.
It's technically better. I still think you could have been just fine with two PB2000s in this room. I mean,
but 8,000 cubic feet, you probably aren't going to hit full reference volume at 20 hertz with a pair of 2000 series subs.
I would not have steered you to the 4,000s. I would have steered you to the 3,000s.
The 3,000s are kind of ideal for this amount of space.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, there's that, but the way to really do this is to go to a third party, Audioholics, Josh Ritchie, some of these other places, and look at the people who've done the measurements and say, this can fill a room of this size. And then they'll usually say small, medium, large, or extreme in Audioholics case. And then they'll define it and find out where you land, and then do that.
But it's nice in the SVS lineup because basically as you go up from series to series, each series basically gives you about 3 decibels more output right down at 20 hertz. I mean, that's large. Some of them go up by 3.5, but it's basically 3 decibels more output. And if you're going, that doesn't sound like much. Well, that's literally twice the power. That's literally what it is twice the power, 3 decibels more output. And so they match really nicely with sort of Audioholics, Bassaholic room size guides where you go, this small one, and then the next step up, perfect for medium, the next step up, perfect for large, the next step up, perfect for extreme, and then beyond that with the 16 Ultra series.
Okay. So he knows dual subs are important. He knows that midpoints opposing walls and top recommendation is the top recommended placement. So that's what he did, even though his theater area is the left hand of the room as a whole. So both subs end up being on the right side of his theater area, front and back. Perfect placement. That's good. You did it right. But if he turns off his 10-inch acoustic research sub completely, he barely notices. It doesn't seem to be contributing much to the bass. I'm not surprised at that, honestly. So while his family was out of the house, he decided to crank up Dunkirk just to see what his system can do. He normally has his PB 4000 set to 15 dB below its max output. Dude, that's still real loud.
It is real loud.
He bumped that up to -12, and he increased the master volume by 10 dB from where he normally has it. He quickly got a headache, so he knows he has all the output capability he would ever want, and then some. And yet, he would enjoy having more tactile feeling in the bass. He just doesn't want the audible bass levels to be that much higher. So is there some way to separate tactile pressure, like the feeling in his chest, from the audible volume level? No. But also kinda.
Yeah, no, okay. But yeah, because there is some stuff going on here.
Okay, so you basically have one sub in this room. I know you have this other sub that's sitting there with the little sign on it.
Yeah, certainly at many of the deep frequencies, you effectively have one sub.
No. So all that low stuff in particular, you know, that 10-inch acoustic research isn't getting anywhere near that. No. So that's why you're saying, at least in my mind, you don't notice it that much. Now, that being said, going from one sub to two subs properly placed, a lot of times you're like, I feel like I have less bass in here. Okay, we've said this before, but it bears repeating. I feel like I have less bass because I now have more even bass, and that more even bass is not having those peaks and dips that I was hearing before.
I used to have this crazy kick at like 55 hertz, and that's gone now. Well, you probably had a huge hump there before, and now you don't.
Right. So now it sounds more even until the low bass kicks in, and all of a sudden, or the bass in general, not just low, but the bass in general kicks in, like for an explosion. All of a sudden, you've got bass everywhere. You're like, holy crap, where did all this bass come from? So, no, you cannot separate volume from tactile feeling. But yes, if you get two subwoofers that are working in conjunction, you can even out that bass. And then going back to your table upstairs that's vibrating, it may be vibrating because you're having a hump or something going on in your room, that having two subs that are, you know, basically working in conjunction and balancing each other out so that you're not getting those peaks, so that it doesn't vibrate quite as much upstairs could happen.
Yeah. And since you say you want more kick in the chest, like that is in the 40 to 60 hertz range largely. Right. And if you get yourself some really nice uniform linear bass, you are totally allowed to apply a little bit of manual EQ. And hey, with SVS subs, you can do that EQ in the subwoofers themselves if you don't want to do it in your AV receiver. And you can just say, I'm just going to make that 40 to 60 hertz range a little bit louder, and that's going to give you that kick in the chest without raising the volume of all the other frequencies.
So yes, with having a matching sub up front improve things. The second PB 4000 wouldn't fit, but the PC 4000 lying on its side would be just fine. Yeah,
that'll do.
I mean, I think you could go with a SB. I mean, I don't really think that you have to have another 4000, but you already got one, so I guess.
Well, a PC 4000 lying on its side is exactly the same as a PB 4000, and absolutely, I'm wholeheartedly in favor of that.
So he loves that his PB 4000 includes a night mode that he can activate using the SVS app. If he were to get a PC 4000, is the app able to manage two subs at once? It would be nice to be able to control both his PB and PC 4000 using the SVS app. I don't know, but what receiver does he have? Because he could just put on the LFC, which is the same.
Right. Yeah. You could use what's built into your AV receiver as opposed to what's built into the subs. So the app, I mean, it can control multiple SVS subs, but it will only control them one at a time. Up at the top, it shows you which of your subs you're controlling, and it's just a little drop-down menu. So as long as you're willing to say, okay, I set my first sub to night mode, and then now I go back and set my second sub to night mode, if that's acceptable to you, then yes, it controls both of them. There isn't a single button push to apply it to both simultaneously, but you
could do it to both simultaneously if you use Odyssey's like LFC or something equivalent to that. LFC is low frequency containment, which is
and he does have a 6012, so it absolutely should have that.
Burn off the subs.
So activate Odyssey LFC, and that should work.
Yeah, that'll do both the subs at once. Dan was very happy with his Paradigm Prestige speaker system and was all set to move ahead with making his super chunk corner bass traps to finally finish his home theater. I sense a butt coming. Okay, I'm looking at pictures here.
Yep, lovely speakers, man. Do I love those speakers? And you're probably going to say the very thing that's coming up.
Very pretty speakers, 2 subs up front. That's exciting.
Here we go.
But then we made a comment about the fact he has both of his SB16 Ultra subs in the front of his room, and now it's driving him nuts. So thanks a bunch. You're welcome. We helped. Way to make you feel self-conscious about a very beautiful home theater. We are right. The issue that is that his scene does not have enough room to put subs in the midpoints of his side walls or in either of the rear corners. He does have an indent in the middle of his back wall, but it's only 15 inches wide. He wouldn't be able to put an SB16 Ultra beneath his center speaker without blocking the bottom of the screen. But he was so concerned by our comments that just an experiment, he shoved his rear row seat as far over to one side as he could, give him just enough room to put one SB Ultra in his rear corner. And then he put the second SB16 Ultra in the diagonally opposite front corner. He didn't do any extensive setup as far as settings go. It did sound a little better in terms of uniformity across all of his seats, but only marginally. And with his back row pushed to the side like that, one seat can no longer recline. We put the kid we don't like in that corner. That's the bad. You got the bad seat, and it has its view partially obstructed by the bulkhead, so the benefits don't outweigh the costs. So. Should just go back to both subs that front and try to put our comments out of his mind. He was happy and fine with the setup before.
I mean, honestly, we can stop there because my answer is yes. I mean, moving your seat so that one of them no longer works, that's not a solution. Not being able to get to your seat. Okay, so he got this pillow because this pillow is approximately 16 inches in diameter. So he's like, if I go cylinders, this is about the size of the cylinder.
Okay. Yeah. So you can't get the cylinder in that thing either.
Not without moving the seats. Yeah.
So he has SB16s, which, by the way, is way too big for this room.
Yes, that is some overkill.
It is way overkill. So could you have fit a smaller sub in that little space back there? Yes, you could have. But whatever, you got what you got. Clearly, especially now, Rob is definitely more hardcore when it comes to getting super strict about where you put things and stuff like that. I mean, I would have no problem with you having both your subs up front, especially since you didn't seem to know there's a problem with it before.
Yes. I mean, the 2 subs are still much better than only having one, and all it's requiring is that you're going to want to do some trial and error with the fully adjustable phase that is for sure built into those SB16 Ultras, and in fact easy to adjust because you can do it using the app from your seat. So it's not even a get up and change something and go sit back down type of deal. You can just change it on the app on your phone and from your seat, and you'll just need to experiment by changing that phase little by little, ideally 3 degrees at a time, although that's really tedious.
I really feel like you're punishing people by giving them this advice, because this advice will drive people absolutely.
But look at who we're talking to.
I'm just saying. My advice is going to be both easier and more insulting.
Just go back to exactly what you had and forget what we said.
Nope, that's not it. I'm going to give the advice after the next question. So she asked, should he sell his SB16 Ultras and replace them with a pair of cylinder PC 4000s? He could potentially snug a cylinder in the rear right corner, maybe put it in the middle of the back wall, partially into that 15-inch wide. Partially into the 15-inch wide.
Well, because it's 16.5 inches diameter, it's only 15 inches. It's not going to fit fully into that.
With the cylinder lying on its side up front of the center, what do we think? I think you should sell both these subwoofers and get smaller ones that actually fit in your room. This is the advice he does not want to hear.
I know.
100%, but it is 100% the right thing to do. The 100% right thing to do is to sell these subwoofers, which are way overkill for your room. Get SB2000s.
It very well might
would crush this room, and you would be able to place them wherever you want. And I 100% guarantee you, any difference you notice in extension or loudness between the SB16s and the SB2000s is 100% between your ears.
Well, you know what he could do with SB2000s? He could get 4 of them. One in each corner, baby.
Well, I'm saying with the 2000, I mean, he could actually stick it in that little indent back there. I mean, I don't normally recommend that, but you could. Oh
yeah, one in the middle of his back wall and one in the middle of his front wall up front, because it'd be small enough to go beneath his center speaker.
That's right. Yeah, and use it as a stand.
Also. Yep.
That's what I would do.
I can see that.
But that's not what he wants to hear. So he says, what about keeping the two SB16 Ultras up front and then adding a pair of cylinders in the back corners or a single cylinder in that 15-inch wide indent? He'd like to have he'd have to nix the plans for super chunk bass straps, but would any of these options be worth it? Nope.
Not that way. I mean, if you do go the 3-sub solution, I did want to mention, we haven't mentioned in a while, but Andy's multi-sub optimizer software. Yeah. That is a great tool. You do need something like Mini DSP because it actually applies not only independent distance and level settings, but also independent EQ for each of the subs. But it really works its best when you have 3 or 4 subwoofers and that are not ideally placed. That is the whole idea, sort of brute forcing your way into it by taking some measurements and letting the software make the decisions on what needs to be done instead of trying to do it by trial and error, which is mind-numbingly impossible with 3 or 4 subs. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But honestly, yeah, I'm coming more and more on board with Tom's idea of just downsizing to some SP2000s, either going middle front, middle back, or heck, 4 of them, 1 in each corner.
So he bought his subs from a dealer rather than directly from SVS. That dealer said he doesn't recommend mixing PB models with SB models, but that mixing SB models with PC cylinder models is just fine. Is he full of it? Well, let me translate that into English. I don't recommend mixing ported models with sealed models, except that I sometimes recommend mixing ported models with sealed models. Because that's exactly what he said.
Because the PCs are exactly the same as the PBs. I mean, the thing is,
they're just a cylinder instead of a box. They've got ports, just like the other ones have ports. It's exactly, he's saying, this is, and I don't begrudge this guy this. This is quite literally someone trying to sound smart. That's what it is.
Well, I mean, the thing in the case of the 4000 series, the PC and the PB can be sealed. Right? They come with optional port plugs and you can seal them, but then it's still the same thing. It's like, well, I can recommend you an SB4000 mixed with a PC4000 as long as you seal it. Okay. Then you could also recommend an SB4000 with a PB4000 as long as you seal the PB4000. It's exactly the same regardless. It's the same situation. And either way, it is okay to mix sealed subwoofers with ported subwoofers as long as they have similar output and extension.
Do you know who doesn't care about having a port or not? Sound.
The sound waves. It really doesn't know. The sound waves don't magically become conscious and go, I came out of a sealed sub, so I can't play nice with this sound wave that I know came out of a ported sub. No,
that's right. I'm sorry.
They're just both sound waves in a room.
Sound wave. I'm music sound waves.
That's right. That's right.
Stupid. All right. Carl on Twitter, he says, is there a minimum recommended room size for a 5.2.4 setup?
I sure hope not.
Yeah. Carl's room is 11.5 by 16.5. With seats about 8 feet from a 75-inch TV. With that relatively small room size, should you go 5.2.2? Now, you go 5.2.4.
You absolutely could. I have gone, 7, but that's 5, regular 5 plus front wides, 0.2.4, in a room smaller than yours. You know, subtract 5 feet from one of those, or 4 feet from one of those dimensions, and there's my room. So I certainly hope that there isn't a restriction on that. And in fact, even in that tiny room, I'd go 9.2.6 if I could. So yeah, knock yourself out and keep the 4
It's all about
overheads.
the angles. It's all about the
angles,
and what speakers you want. I mean, if you said, "Can I go 7.2.4?" I would go, I don't know about the surround backs.
Although, I mean, he's only 8 feet from his TV, and this is a 16.5 foot long room, so you've got the room for surround backs. You could go 7.2.4.
It depends on exactly how you wanted to lay this thing out. So you've got plenty of room for it.
Yep.
Do I think you should do it? I don't know. Probably not.
But there's no restriction.
No restrictions. Mike wants to know which subwoofers to get. SVS. Next question.
Not necessarily true.
All right. His room is L-shaped and also open to a stairway up to the main floor. He cannot install a door either at the top or bottom of these stairs. So in total, he's dealing with about 4,600 cubic feet, with his downstairs L-shaped theater and bar room being about 2,800 cubic feet of that. Awfully hard to place subwoofers optimally in a room that
also leads upstairs. Yeah. Yeah.
The theater area is 19 by 11.5, and then it's open on the right side to a 14 by 11.5 bar area. The ceiling is 7.5 feet throughout. If I had a bar in my home theater, you would have to call the cop. You would have to call the paramedics. Like, that's just I would make up drinking games to play by myself. And that's a sad state, but it's absolutely true. I'd watch Archer and just they'd have to come in with the jaws of life to open my mouth. All right, anyways, here's this thing. Whatever. We got a thing and whatever. He's about 8 feet away from his TV and currently has a 5.0 JBL Stage Series speaker system. Those are like a home theater in a box with like kind of flattish speakers.
Oh no, they're bigger than that. These were JBL's almost like horn-loaded design. So these are quite large.
I see them. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was thinking I think that's the one my parents had. He knows we always recommend at least 2 subs, but size is a consideration. So he's mostly considering a 12-inch rhythmic sealed models. What would we recommend? Well, you got a ton of space here, and you don't really want to pressurize because you're pressurizing upstairs as well.
It's going upstairs as well. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's not a terrible choice at all.
Can you get 2 and put them on either side of your couch? Because that's kind of what I like here. I kind of like having 2 smaller subs, not trying to pressurize the space, not trying to get full reference volume. Well, you'll get plenty of volume out of these things, but one on each side of your couch.
Yeah, I could see that because I mean this is a tricky thing to. I mean, I would guess maybe. If I were saying where would I put these 2 subs, maybe to the right of his TV and then at the back of the room, like on the same side. So both of these subs basically a little bit to the right of your couch.
Right, and then there's a bifold closet.
But yeah, near the bifold closet doors where I don't know if it would fit.
Yeah, I don't think it would.
Yeah, actually, if you can, having them on either side of your couch is a darn good idea. I mean, 12-inch sealed rhythmic subs, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if you went sealed SVS subs, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. Yeah. I mean, 4,600 cubic feet, even if you're considering upstairs, you don't have to go insane.
No, you could still do that with like a PB 2000s with
or PC 2000s, right? Yeah. Maybe you lay a PC 2000 down at the front of the room, beneath your TV and front speaker there, and then you have another one standing at the back of your room somewhere. I mean, the cylinders could work in here. Possibly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I would kind of either do that, or if you're like, the size of these sealed rhythmics and the looks of them is exactly what I want, then I have zero problem with that. I can say go for that. The alternative would be cylinders.
Yeah. Infinite Gary. Gary asks, if you're using external amps and you change the external amp to a different model, why is it sometimes necessary to change the volume level on the preamp in order to hear it at equal volume level? Is that due to how many watts each amp can deliver, or is it something else? It's just the gain.
It's the amount of gain on the input that you're plugging that into. Yeah, so I mean, you'll see it rated on a lot of amplifiers. They'll say this has 29 decibels of gain, or this has 32 decibels of gain, or something. Those are the common figures that you'll see. But yeah, different amounts of gain, which is again is you can think of it as like amplification of just the voltage of the signal. That's what the gain is, and different amps have different amounts.
I think we can do one more, maybe 2. Adam asked, from wherever he got it. Adam asked if it'd be worth hiring a professional calibrator for a C8 OLED. We said there might be a small amount of value in it, especially if he's never had a fully calibrated TV. But we also said that you can get darn close by using some of the default picture modes, or maybe just a couple of setting changes. So what about the audio side of things? He's got Odyssey Multi-Q XT32. Will hiring an Odyssey Pro calibrator be worth it versus what the auto setup will provide? He does not have a dedicated theater. It's a mixed up living room, and he thinks it's likely
mixed use
living room, and he thinks it's likely a tough space as far as acoustics go. So what do we think? How much flexibility do you have in your room? If you literally have no flexibility in your room and you're not going to buy any additional equipment, then I don't see any reason to hire a pro calibrator. If you're going to hire a pro calibrator, they're going to come in and say, you need to put acoustic panels here, and here, buy this piece of gear, which I will then come back and use to calibrate, this, and this. And then, if you're not going to spend any money other than just getting the calibrator in there, you're wasting your money. He's just going to tell you what's going on in your room, and you're going to be like, okay, well, thanks a lot. See you later. Loser.
Yeah, like if you're literally talking about bringing in someone to run Odyssey for you.
It's Odyssey Pro is its own box.
It is. It's a $700 thing that you have to purchase plus the calibration service.
Right. So it's in addition to that. So if you're not going to spend any additional money on gear and moving things around and doing stuff like that, then there's no reason to get a professional calibrator for audio.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Yeah, I have to agree. It's how much flexibility do you have? How much are you willing to do? How much advice are you willing to follow? And additional things you're willing to purchase? Yeah, that's an awful lot.
The video calibrator, you have them come in, they look at what you have, and they
Right.
they adjust it. But that's not how audio works.
No, because the room is a tremendous amount of your audio system, and if you can't do a lot to change that, then having someone run Odyssey for you, there's not a tremendous amount that they can do for you.
Yeah, you give me $500, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Nick might be building a new house from the ground up. Obviously, he's excited by the prospect of being able to specify exact dimensions for a dedicated theater room, but what should those dimensions be? He wants to have 2 rows of seats with 4 reclining seats in each row. He wants a large field of view for the front row, nearly 1-to-1 for the screen width versus seating distance. And he wants to be able to put 4 subwoofers, one in each corner, as part of a 9.4.4 configuration. So what room dimensions would we recommend? So there is like the golden ratio of,
there's that
walls to ceiling to
1.618 to 1.
Yeah. I don't care about those. Honestly, those were, to me, were a lot more relevant when we had no idea how subwoofers placement made a big difference, and now we do. So I think we have a lot more flexibility in our room dimensions. I mean, you could still follow it. It's not a bad idea, but it does limit you. If it were me, I would quite literally build this around the seating.
Sure.
At least I would pick my seats, measure them, figure out how much hallway I wanted on each side, or if at all, and then that's the width of my room. Then, I would decide what size, if you're going to have a false wall or something like that, you got to figure that out. Figure out what how wide that room is now, how big that screen is, how far away you need to sit from it. Make sure you're sitting in either your main seats, or basically I want the middle of the room to go right through your seats. So your front seat is a little bit in front of, and your second row of seats is a little bit behind of. I mean, you could put them all behind or all in front of if you wanted to put a bar area in the back or something. That would be fine.
And if you have the false wall up front, it's quite easy to have, as far as the actual acoustic space goes, all of the seats behind the midpoint of the room, but it doesn't look that way because up front you're taking up 2 or 3 feet of false wall space.
But you see how the chairs dictate all this. So the chairs tell you how wide your room's going to be. How wide your room's going to be determines how big your screen could be, which determines how far away your front row is from it, which determines, the length of your room and everything else. So you start with the seats in my mind.
But I'm willing to give you some numbers based on what you said. You can use a handy tool online that is called the Room Mode Calculator. And down there, you're looking for, there'll be a little graph down there under the Bonello section, where what you're hoping for is for that number to continually go up gradually. You don't want it to be up and down at all. It should be a gradual going up of numbers under the Bonello section. And then they also have another little graph called the Bolt area. And as long as your X lands within the Bolt area, according to the Room Mode Calculator, that should be acoustically a good room. Now, the other easy rule of thumb is that if you make the dimensions of your room prime numbers, you are never going to have overlapping room modes, because prime numbers mean the only numbers that fit into it are 1 and itself. So I was like, okay, 4 recliners across. I'm like, that could be about 11 feet across if you go for nice, big, comfy recliners. And then I want 3 feet on either side of that. Well, that gives me 17 feet wide. That's a prime number. And then if you're sitting the distance that you're talking about, I was like, well, let's start with a 135-inch screen instead. In fact, let's start with a screen that is 120 inches wide. All right. Now, if we go that and you want this close to 1-to-1 screen distance, I'm like, for that, I would sit 11 feet away, and I would put it on a false wall that is 2 feet deep. So that's 13 feet from the front wall. And then I'm going to want 6 feet from the front row to the back row. And then I want 3 or 4 feet behind that. Well, if I make the room 23 feet long, that's a prime number. And that works for all of those distances. And then for the ceiling, an 11-foot ceiling is probably unreasonable. 10 feet is very nearly as good. So is 9.5. So we want a fairly tall ceiling in here, but 17 by 23. There you go.
All right. We're going to have to be done because I have to go.
Understood. All right. Well, we have quite a few people left because you had 20 questions on the list. So we have Johnny. We have Thomas W. Rob W., who wrote to us on Facebook. Bobby M. Damian D., who wrote to us on Twitter. Scrolling down here. Anthony B. Ilongo. And Don S. You are all on the list. We will answer you all next week. I'll try to ping people via email for anything that's time sensitive.
All right. And I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Shannon for going to www.avrant.com and leaving us a cup of coffee, a PayPal donation. And we want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, Shannon, thank you very much for the donation. It's appreciated. And patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if anyone would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. Thanks to our 82 patrons over there.
And I want to thank Jason for talking us up to SVS.
Yeah, congrats on your purchase of that wireless sound base and the SB1000. That is nuts in your home office. Congrats, Jason, and thanks for talking us up.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.